We started this series about getting rid of our demons, and by that what I mean is everybody has something in their life that they're dealing with, right? Some people have addictions. Some people have something that they carry from their past. Some people have a grudge. Some people have damage from when they were kids or from somebody hurting them at one point in their life. And we carry these demons with us, and they interfere with our functionality and our happiness on a daily basis. And until you are able to put those issues in the back, in the rear view mirror behind you, you have a hard time functioning efficiently as a Christian, as a spiritual being, as a follower of Jesus. Because it always comes back and interferes with your daily decisions. Not just with your daily decisions, but also with your mood, with your spirit, with how you feel. Some people are always depressed. Some people are always in a bad mood, down, and just can't seem to get out of the funk, and just function, because they carry these things with them. So we talked about Lazarus last week, the man who was possessed by demons. Today we talk about Mary Magdalene. The Bible tells us that she was oppressed by 7 demons. And when we think about that, that's somebody who has serious problems in their life. And it's somebody that is suffering, that's dealing with issues, that can't live properly until the day that she started following Jesus and was released and then became a devoted disciple of Jesus. So I want to walk us through that story a little bit so that we can see the whole process of what has happened to her. We are starting this story in Luke chapter 8. All of the verses are going to be on the screen. And we are looking at this at the moment when Jesus is gone at this point. I remember when my father died. I remember when my mother died. You remember when somebody that is very important in your life dies? The feeling of emptiness. The feeling of, where do I go from here? The feeling of, wow, my dad's not around anymore, and he is the person that always stepped up when I needed help. Wow, my mother is not here anymore, and she was the person you can always knock on your mother's door, and you're not going to be turned away. So when you lose somebody who is that important to you in your life, it's a feeling of sometimes even desperation for some people. So she lost somebody that she really totally depended on. She lost somebody who healed her. She lost somebody who gave her purpose. She lost somebody who just was everything to her. Jesus was crucified. He was buried. He touched so many lives. She was a disciple. She was a follower. The Bible tells us soon afterward, he went on through cities and villages. Imagine a woman following a teacher back then on foot through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. This is what he did. And the 12 were with him, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. So you have a person who was rejected by society. if you had evil spirits and infirmities, if you were sick, if you were a leper, if you were somebody who had serious issues in your life back then in that society, you would be rejected. Nobody wants to be around you. Nobody wants to help you. Nobody wants to do anything for you. So these people, these women, when they were healed from their infirmities and from their possessions and from demons in their life, they automatically, naturally decided to follow the healer, to follow the person who gave them the freedom. They just decided to follow him. So the Bible tells us that the 12 disciples were with Jesus and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, and then it lists them. Mary called Magdalene, from whom 7 was the manager of the Herod's household. Herod was a king, remember? So this woman also followed Jesus. So you can imagine that, when I think about it, it tells me that Herod and the people who were in the authority, they knew Jesus. They knew about him. Because even people from their own household, some of them were following Jesus. So, this particular woman, Joanna, how did she leave the husband who was a manager of the king's house and went follow Jesus throughout the countryside? There had to be a devotion. There had to be a desire to be with Jesus more than to be in the household of a king. And Susanna and many others, and then look at this, who provided for them out of their means. So you have Jesus and the disciples, they're not working well now. They decided to devote their life not just to follow Jesus, but also to provide food and necessities that these people had, these 13 people, Jesus and his disciples. You have to eat, you have to sleep somewhere. You're walking for years. You need new sandals. You need a robe. You need to wash your clothes. You have all kinds of needs. And this is what these women had provided. So when we read this text about these women, and you can look at in your outline that you were given, the text assumes not just possession of Mary, but completeness of oppression. 7 demons, she was completely oppressed. That's what we just read in this text. And then all of a sudden she was healed. She was healed by Jesus. In Jewish thought, for Jews at the time, number 7 was a number of totality. So she was possessed, truly possessed. I mean, there was no way out for her. That's what this text is telling us. And then she was completely dominated. Her life was dominated. There are people in this world who are so dominated by and oppressed by Satan, by their past, by their history, by the damage that was done to them, they just can't find healing. And they just keep going back to the release that they get from whatever dysfunctional habit they have picked up along the way. I have a lot of people in my family who were drunks. That's how they deal with oppression. That's how they deal with past memories. That's how they deal with their issues, with their demons. There are people who use drugs, go back and back and back, over and over and over back into drugs. And so she was completely possessed and dominated, and then she was completely healed. So that tells us, you and I, that whatever issue we are carrying in our own life, there is a possibility for a complete healing. Jesus has the ability to give us the complete healing. So Luke, in the Gospel of Luke lists her not in shame, but with honor among the women who supported Jesus' ministry. So he doesn't put any shame on her. She's honored in the Gospel of Luke. She's not just present, she's also financing Jesus and his ministry. These women provided for Jesus out of their own means. She used her resources to help Jesus. She's not, in the Gospel of Luke, she's not hiding behind the male disciples. She's a major figure following Jesus. When Jesus heals you, then what? What do you do? You know, in her case, she devoted her life to Jesus. When you look at, on your paper, exegetical insight, her deliverance leads directly to active discipleship, not passive gratitude. Some people, you know, when you do a favor for them, they just say, oh, thank you so much. This means so much to me. And they have this gratitude, you know, and they're like, thank you so much. You know, well, in her case, it was not just passive gratitude. It was active discipleship, you know. So you can help somebody, and they can thank you, and then 2 days later go back to whatever it was that got them in trouble in the first place. In her case, she didn't do that. She wasn't just thankful in that way. She, you know, the gratitude changed her life forever, where she decided to follow Jesus. There is one other thing, one other thought here that we need to think about. I think that she followed Jesus also for another reason. Because she knew that if she was in the close proximity to Jesus, that the demons couldn't get to her. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, you know, they follow Jesus when they need Jesus. But then they go back to their demons because they love their demons. But in her case, she decided, you know what? I'm going to stick by Jesus 24/7. I'm going to devote my life to following Jesus because that's where I'm safe. When you have been oppressed by 7 demons, then you don't want to take a chance on walking away, stepping away from Jesus and going back to the oppression. You don't want to go back into the bondage. So I think that's why she stayed with Jesus. And that's why she devoted her life to Jesus. And you know what? All of us here, we follow Jesus. We gave our life to Jesus. We were baptized. We started coming to church. And then the question is, to what degree do we follow Jesus? Is it a complete, total devotion? Or is it Sabbathing? Or is it twice a month? Now they say that the average American, average church-going American will go to church twice a month for an hour. So that's the level of devotion that we have in America today. We're talking about Christians. We're not talking about non-Christians. I'm not even talking about. They devote zero time to following Jesus. You know, so, but you can see how in our society and in our culture, we have gone away from following Jesus, you know, even as a church, in a more consistent way, where you had your, you know, midweek, and you had your Friday, and you had your Sunday evening thing, and you had your church on Saturday. And let me tell you, what we are doing today, where you're going to have a church and a potluck and a concert and a gym night, is how the church used to be done back in the day all the time. You know. I mean, even now, if you go to ethnic churches like Indonesian church, I don't know about Spanish churches anymore. I think even Spanish churches are becoming more and more American, you know. But Indonesian church, like if you go to an Indonesian church or one of those from Asia or South America, you will see that people come to church and they stay in church all day. You know, well, music, food, kids, it's a whole day event. So in these first few verses, Luke 8, 1-3, we see that she devoted her complete life to Jesus. It wasn't just a part-time thing. It was a totality. It was a, and by that, let me tell you what I mean. I don't mean by that now that you got to take your Bible and get on your knees and be on your knees 24/7. But your heart needs to be open to Jesus 24/7. That's what I'm talking about. So you can be at your job, you can be, at your sports, you can be at your family dinner, you can be, running around with your kid and having fun. And all I'm saying is that during that whole period, as long as you're awake, your heart is open to the workings of God, to Jesus. And that's where she was at. But she, had this privilege of being with physical Jesus. She had the privilege of being with Jesus, who was embodied in a human form all the time. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could be with Jesus, with a physical, real Jesus, where you could see him? Well, you know what? Maybe you can't see him, but he can see you. He sees you all the time, every day, 24/7. And some people, they think that they can step away from Jesus and follow their demons because they like their demons. But they don't realize that Jesus is still following them. He still has his eye on them. He's still waiting for an opportunity to heal them, to turn them around. So Jesus can see you, and he does see you all the time. So then we go to John 20, verses 1 and 2. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early, while it was still dark. What does this tell you about this person? Darkness. Jesus is dead. All hope is gone. Right? The disciples have scattered. When somebody dies and we go to a graveyard and we do the funeral service, and then what do? We say, well, it's done, right? Let's go back to church and let's have some lunch. And we basically say, what's the use of staying here at the cemetery? There's no use. They're gone. So Jesus is gone. He's buried. Everybody else said, what's the use of being here? Let's just go home. But she comes while it was still dark. What are you going to see in the darkness? She couldn't sleep, obviously, right? Her heart was longing for Jesus. She was brokenhearted. She was experiencing the loss. And so she says, I'm going to go there in the darkness. And when she got there, she saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Darkness is both. It's literal because it's real. The darkness is symbolic for confusion. It's a symbol of grief. It's a symbol of unfinished healing. You wake up in the middle of the night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and especially, I hate winter, I tell you. I hate winter. I can't tell you how much I hate winter. You know why? Not because it's cold, but because it's like sun sets at 4:20 in the afternoon. Are you kidding me? I cannot stand it. And then you go home and it's dark. By 5 o'clock, it's totally dark. And then, you don't see sun again until what, 7:30? Like, where's the sun? I need the sun. I need the sunshine. And you wake up in the dead of night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I look at my clock and I'm thinking like, man, there is another 6 hours of darkness. What am I going to do? Well, in the summer, you can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and it's already, you can see the light already, right? You have a whole huge day, life ahead of you. Darkness is not good. It doesn't feel good. So this darkness, John writes about this darkness. While it was still dark, he wants us to get this image in our head of the whole desperation and this whole tragedy of night. Nothing good happens at night. Jesus is dead. He's buried. Now she comes over there, and all of a sudden she realizes that the stone, and these were pretty big stones that covered these entrances to these graves, it was gone. It was gone. There is an interesting note that you'll see in your paper. Mary walks towards darkness, not away, because love is greater than fear. She loved Jesus so much that she didn't care that it was dark. She was seeking the body. She did not know that Jesus resurrected. She came to see the body. She came to pay the respects. Like we do on Memorial Day, right? We do. We go to cemeteries and we take flowers. And when I go to Florida to visit my brother, I take flowers, we together go to our mother's grave. Here I go to Arvada Cemetery. Not because I'm going to see my father, but because just to pay the respects. This is where his body lays. And this is what she was doing. She was not expecting resurrection. She came to honor the dead. She was not expecting life. In other words, she was faithful even when it all looked like it was pointless. Like, we know when I go to visit the grave, it's pointless. That person doesn't know that I'm there. It's just for me, right? It's meaningful to me who is alive, not to them who are gone. So she wanted to find a little bit of meaning by visiting the grave of Jesus. So there is a principle here that I want to mention. Resurrection is often revealed to those who remain faithful even in the darkness. She was not expecting the resurrection. So after she saw that the stone was gone, so she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have laid him." She's concerned about Jesus' body. She's distressed. Look at what she has gone through just in this weekend. Is she experienced this tremendous level, intensity of hate towards Jesus that people have demonstrated. People who were killing Jesus and who were murdering him, they exhibited this level of hate that you couldn't get over it, when you see that level of hate, it affects you. When you see that somebody is going to be murdered without any mercy, and they didn't do nothing. So this is what she experienced, and she felt, and she saw with her own eyes. Like today, you see videos of people being murdered all over the world. Gaza, Ethiopia, Nigeria. The videos that you see out there are absolutely horrible. You cannot even imagine that any human being would have that level of hate in their heart. So this is what she experienced, this tremendous, she's a witness. And then she goes, and then the body's gone. The grave is open. And she's like, how far will these people go who hate Jesus so much? How far will they go? Is it not enough that they just killed him? Now they're going to desecrate his body and throw it who knows where, into a garbage dump? Who knows what she was thinking, right? So she's all freaking out, literally, and going back to the disciples and saying, they took the Lord, and I do not know where they have hid him. Where have they hid him? So they are asking her, why is she weeping? They know why she's weeping. They don't need information. They want her to explain what's behind the weeping, right? They are inviting her to reconsider her grief. Know the answer. He already knows the answer. But he wants you to rethink whatever it is that's going on through your head and through your mind at that moment. You know, I'm hoping that as I talk here today, that you are asking yourself, that the Holy Spirit is asking you, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you doing the dysfunctional thing that's your thing? Why? What's behind it? I think she was sad because her security, her pillar of security, her foundation, her safety, she felt it was gone. You know? And angels, they want her to reconsider because they knew that it was not gone. Right? Sometimes we feel that it's over. I can't fix this. This is, you know, beyond my ability to get back to normal. I cannot handle this problem. And we just, in her case, she was crying. Some people just give up, drown themselves in some other behavior that's not good. They drown themselves in their past, or they fantasize about the future, or they're not focusing on here and now. And angels are asking her, why? Why are you crying, really? Because they knew that he was alive. Jesus was alive. So if he's alive, then your security is not gone. If he's alive, then you can still be near him. If he is alive, then he can still accept you and walk with you. The angels sit where his body had been. And this is the imagery of the mercy seat. Two angels, like, you know, two angels on the side of the ark. Christ is gone, just the angels here. We are talking about the new covenant that's happening, right? Mary is finding herself at the beginning of a new era, at the beginning of a new covenant. She's finding herself at the moment in a human history when everything is changing, where Jesus had overcome Satan and sin and death. A new age, a new covenant, a new salvation. But she's not able to recognize it because of her own grief. She's not able to recognize the gravity of the moment, the importance of the moment. She's not able to recognize the historical nature of the moment in which she's finding herself because she's grieving. And that's why angels are saying to her, why? Why are you grieving? Sometimes we don't recognize that Jesus is talking to us. Sometimes we don't recognize that Jesus is actually real and alive in your life. And that's why I said earlier, sometimes we walk away from Jesus without realizing that he is still following us, without realizing that he still has his eyes on us. Sometimes people want to hide. You can't hide. Jesus sees you. He follows you. He sees you. He knows where you are, who you are, what's going on in your heart. And he's waiting for the right moment to bring healing into your life. But you can't recognize it because of whatever issues are going on with you. So then, let's see what happens next. Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Sometimes in our spiritual experience, Jesus is right there, and we don't recognize him. We don't see him. Sometimes when you wake up in the middle of the night and it's 1 o'clock and it's in the middle of the winter and you feel like, what the heck, there's 6 more hours of darkness. We don't recognize that Jesus is right there in the room with us. It doesn't matter if the sunshine is out or not, he is there. The Son of God. So she sees Jesus standing there, doesn't know who he is. And then Jesus also says to her, woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking? Right? And then she says, the Bible says, supposing him to be the gardener. She thought he was a guy who took care of the lawn. She thought he was a gardener. Didn't recognize him. Interesting, isn't it? That that this was written about what she was thinking. Because in theology, garden is Garden of Eden, isn't it? Adam was supposed to be the gardener, right? He wasn't. He failed. And Jesus, now, when you look at this whole picture, Jesus actually is the new gardener. Jesus is the one who is restoring the new Eden. Restoring the, so the fact that she thought that he was a gardener, it's very interesting to me. So, key point here is that deliverance may be instantaneous. She was delivered from 7 demons. But true recognition of Christ sometimes takes time. Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will go and take him away, she says. She just wants the body of Jesus. And then in verse 16 comes the turning point, right? What did Jesus say in verse 16? Did he try to convince her of who he was? What did he do? Just one word. He called out her name. He called out her name. He didn't have to go into big theology about resurrection and angels. And as soon as he called out her name, she was able to recognize him. And she called back to him and said, Rabboni, which means a teacher. He said, Mary. And she knew. At that moment, she knew who he was. He doesn't preach, explain, or prove. He names her. Identity spoken of Christ, by Christ, restores perception. Recognition is not cognitive, it's relational. If you walk with Jesus, if you follow Jesus, it becomes a relationship. Then you will be able to recognize Jesus in all kinds of different situations. And that's why I keep repeating in this sermon today that Jesus follows you. And he knows you by name. And he recognizes you. You see, every one of the names here in this building today, Jesus knows. And you know, my prayer today is that Jesus is now, today, in this service, maybe in the music, maybe in the message, maybe sometimes during the potluck or during the concert, that Jesus speaks your name and that you hear it. You know, Jesus, when we say Jesus is calling you, Jesus is knocking on the door, he's not knocking on some door in some 500 apartment building in Chicago, not knowing who is behind the door. He's knocking on your door. He's calling out to you. I mean, to me, it's amazing. The moment he said to her, Mary, that was it. She recognized him instantly. This verb, epistrepho, she turns toward him when he speaks her name. It was a physical turning. She physically turned to look at him, right? It was an inner turning. It was a spiritual turning. It was a vocational turning. When he called her name and she turned to him, she turned toward somebody that she knew, toward somebody who was everything in her life, toward somebody that she dedicated completely her life to. She turned to him. And you know, maybe today in this room, we have people who have walked away from Jesus and tried to do their own thing and got stuck in the mud of life, got deceived by a powerful enemy, right? Well, Jesus is calling on you by your name, and he's saying, turn back to me. Turn back in every way. She was delivered from the power of 7 demons. She was delivered. You can be delivered from your demons. I can be delivered from mine, whatever they are. Not only that, but you can be forgiven. You can be forgiven. Also, God can give you grace to forgive those who have offended you. God can give you mercy and grace to forgive even those who have hurt you. That happens too. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not intentionally, sometimes mistakes are made. But that's what Jesus provides. He provides forgiveness, and he gives you grace to forgive others. And this is this is why she turned to him. In that one moment when she turned to him, that was, I think, this is what the spiritual moment for each one of us needs to look like. Turning to Jesus every day. Then Jesus said to her, do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. And verse 18 says that Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord, and that he had said these things to her. She is the first one, the first witness to his resurrection. She was freed. She was delivered. She followed Jesus. She dedicated her life to Jesus. And then she lost everything when they killed him. And she thought it was over. And she thought there was, nothing left for her. And sometimes, you and I come to a point in our life when we think it's over. It's like, I'm not going to get the second chance. I'm not going to be able to, where all of your hopes and all of your dreams are, and everything just goes into the dumpster, right? And you feel like that. But then restoration. Because Jesus is beyond anything that we can even imagine. His power, His mercy, His love, His goodness is beyond all of that. They couldn't kill him. They couldn't keep him down. Because he had a mission. His mission was to save you and I. He wasn't going to stay in the grave. He had to come back to life for you and for me. That's why he was resurrected. So she's the first apostle of the resurrection. Go to my brothers and say to them. So she does. She tells them. They still don't believe. They still didn't believe. So you have this tremendous reversal in life. The once possessed woman becomes the first true evangelist. She was possessed at one point, hopeless. The old Mary Magdalene was possessed. She was bound by shame. She came from darkness. She was silenced. She had a past and the background that was not good. All of the things that you and I can relate with. All of the things that happen to us in our own lives. Darkness and silence and abandonment and rejection by other people. All kinds of demons. And she was delivered from all of that. And the new Mary was delivered. She became the voice of resurrection. She was the first witness of dawn, of light. She was the center of proclamation that Jesus was alive. And most of all, she was sent by Jesus. Remember the man who was possessed by the demons that we talked about last week? What did Jesus say to him when he was healed? He said, go to your city and tell them. He sent him. When Jesus restores you, he does not say, oh, now you can go and just have a nice retirement. You can go on a beach now, sit on the beach and, relax. When he restores you, he's sending you. He's sending you. I love the fact that today in the church we have so many young people. People in their 18, 20, 17, young people. Full church, the church is full of young people. Downstairs you have a ton of children. Jesus is sending you. Jesus is sending you to be a witness. He's not sending you out there to conquer this world. He's sending you to conquer this world with His love. He's sending you to be an example to others. He's sending you to show your peers that there is a better way of life. You guys are young, and so many like you here in the church, and you may think, I'm young, I don't know, I don't have the gravity to change the world. Yes, you do. You do. Me and Milos, we're not able to reach out to somebody who is 15, 16, 17. But you guys are. So we all have to do what Jesus is sending us to do. We are all sent to proclaim the freedom and the message that He has for us. So, Mary, I'm going to close with this sentence. Mary doesn't just lose demons, she gains purpose. And this is what Jesus can do for every one of us. Free us from our demons and give us a new purpose in life.